Good afternoon, everyone. Apparently my screen doesn't want to share both presentation and me at the same time. So I'll just start by saying hello to everyone, and I will get our slides up in just a second. So thanks for joining us, particularly after what I'm sure has been a busy school day for most of you. My name is Ciara Walsh. I am a commissioning editor here at Folan's. Spent the past 3 or 4 years working on the Maths My Way program. So it is so lovely to see people actually using it now and getting feedback from how it's going down in the classroom. I'm going to be joined this afternoon by Patrick, who is our series editor and co-author of the program. And we're just going to go through some tips, some helpful guidance on implementing the program, and then answer some of your questions. So let me get started by sharing my screen here, and we'll go through a couple of slides. I know lots of people are still dropping in. That's absolutely fine. I'd say people are on their way home from work and so on at the moment. Okay, so let's go for the presentation here. Okay. Okay, so this afternoon's agenda, we are going to spend our first half hour, so 3:30 until 4 o'clock, having a look at implementing Maths My Way and some helpful guidance and tips around it. I hope everyone has been enjoying it, but don't worry if you haven't been and you're finding it all a little bit tricky. It's absolutely a lot to get your head around, and we're going to help you through that and with some practical tips and so on, as I said. And Patrick has been through this all before in terms of changing the way he teaches maths to suit the new curriculum. And also he's using Maths My Way himself this year in his classroom, so he knows exactly what it's like to implement it. And then for the second half hour from 4 until 4:30, we've got our sport clinic where we will answer questions as you have them. I know a lot of people submitted questions as they registered for the webinar, so we have some of those ready to go. We'll be mostly looking at things like resource availability, which a lot of the questions were about, some technical troubleshooting, and then some content queries. So just to note, if anyone is having trouble with their audio or video, there's a couple of quick fixes you can try. And Sarah is on hand in the chat as well. If anything's not working, you can drop in, let her know, and she can help you troubleshoot that just to make sure you're hearing and seeing everything. And I think she dropped some tips in there about muting notifications as well, because they can be annoying during a webinar like this. Now, some quick housekeeping then before we get started. First of all, yes, this webinar is being recorded. So if you are in the middle of driving home from school, cooking dinner, whatever it is, don't worry if you miss anything, you will get a recording afterwards. This webinar is aimed primarily at Maths My Way users, but it is useful for all. So if you are still undecided about what program you're going to use for the new curriculum and you've stuck with your old one for now, you will still find this interesting in terms of tips and tricks for implementing the new curriculum and also get a good look into what Maths My Way is all about. The focus for today is 1st to 6th class. So if you are in an infant setting, there will again still be things in here that you might take and adapt for infant classrooms, but primarily we will be focused on 1st to 6th class today. And finally, if you could wait and share your questions at the end, that would be great, because we already have a lot of them in ready to be answered, and also a lot of questions that have come in Patrick is going to address within his presentation for the first half hour. So a lot of things should be covered off then. So when we get to the second half, when we're doing our sport clinic, please by all means do use the chat function to talk to us, ask as many questions as you want, but if you could just hold off on those until we get to that section, that would be great. Okay, so implementing Maths My Way. Patrick, I'm going to hand over to you, and I'll stop sharing my screen. You can take over and we'll chat through this. I'll be here in the background, and I am available in the chat if anyone's having trouble with anything.
Great, thanks, Malika. So hopefully now everyone can see the slides here. It's great. Thank you everyone for turning up this evening. It's really great to see so many people here, and as Ciara mentioned, we hope you're enjoying the program so far. With implementing a new curriculum and a new program, of course there'll be things that come up, challenges along the way, but great to hear all of the feedback, all the positive feedback that's coming in so far. Some of them are here on the call as well, but they're brilliant for sharing everything they hear out on the road back with Kira, and in turn it filters its way down to us. And it's lovely to hear. And the team are really dedicated about this and share it all back with us. Yep, my name is Patrick Neary. I'm sure I met a lot of you on webinars previously. I'm teaching in Scoil Senior National School here in Swords. For the past number of years, I was teaching 6th class, and this year I've moved down to teaching 3rd class. So we're a senior school, so they're the babies in our school. Quite a change, but a nice challenge as well. It's felt like a really quick term in some ways, and just to start by congratulating everyone on getting to Halloween. We have a week and a half left, so we're almost there, and I hope everyone has some nice plans for the week off. And obviously this week is Maths Week, which is nicely timed for this webinar. And I hope everyone is taking some time out to mark week in your schools, and that there's different things going on as well. The math size posters are up on my Folens as well, which would be a nice Maths Week challenge that you might use this week with your class as well. So there's a lot going on, but it's great that we're almost at midterm, and that we've had now. I think this is a great time to have this webinar, because we've all now had a chance to start using the program, to see what it's like, to see what's coming up for us, and it's a nice time to take a reset to see kind of what's working well for us, what questions do we have, and what's coming up. So to get started, let's begin by looking at the curriculum itself. And there's a new cover on the curriculum since the framework launch. But for the maths curriculum itself, and you'd seen this slide during the IDIO training, the introduction phase of the new curriculum was the 2023-2024 school year. The 2024-2025 school year was aimed at implementation, and 2025 onwards is what's earmarked as the embedding stage. So in this school year, we've all entered the embedding stage, no matter what kind of age group you're teaching. There was no phased approach that third or junior infants would enter the embedding stage first, then senior infants. We were all into this stage together. It's important to note, though, that it doesn't say 2025-2026 school year. There's no expectation that it will be fully embedded in 1 year. In fact, research shows that embedding a new curriculum is a long-term goal, and it takes a number of years to embed a new curriculum. So the word onwards there is important. And I think for our first year in that stage, to really just be proud of taking some step on this journey towards embedding a new curriculum. There's a lot of change coming with the curriculums or with the curricula, and every step we make on the journey towards embedding it in our practice and in our classrooms is a huge positive. And the fact that there's people here this evening on this webinar is just an indication of how dedicated teachers are in this country, and to take the wins that we're doing our best with something that's new. To start, I just want to have a little look at some of the detail in the curriculum, because the curriculum, it's all online. This is a screenshot from the website. But when you're using a program, we've purposely made the planning as straightforward as possible for you, so that you don't have to go back to the curriculum. It's all there in the long-term plans and the short-term plans for you. But I do think it's worth having a look at where did this come from? Or, why did we make the decisions that we made when preparing Maths My Way? And just to become familiar with what the curriculum looks like itself. So this is your kind of launch page for the and operations. So all of the operations that we'd be teaching across the different stages. And you see it's broken up into our 4 stages. And this year I'm teaching 3rd class. So personally, I'd be looking at stage 3 there. So the learning outcomes are the really broad learning outcome that covers the entire stage. So if I'm teaching subtraction to my 3rd class, the learning outcome for it is understand and apply flexibly the 4 operations and the relationships between them, or between operations. that's really broad in terms of trying to plan maybe, your entire weeks of work on operations. There's a lot, there's a lot in there. It can be taken in lots of different directions. So I guess when I'd first look at the learning outcome, I see that in third and fourth class, the children will be looking at all four operations and that the relationships between them are important. But it doesn't really tell me enough yet that if I want to teach subtraction this week, I wouldn't be exactly sure what to do. Our next protocol is the concepts. And when I look at the concepts here, these are done by stage as well. So I'm looking at the column that starts with commutative there. I have all of these concepts, but in third and fourth class, there's no particular concept here that is specific to subtraction. So there's some that are connected to it, like the use of the calculator can reduce computative focus, allowing for increased focus on strategies. But there's nothing very detailed about subtraction. So that's where I have to go to the toolkit. And you'd be familiar with the progression continua from the primary language curriculum. But this is where I need to go then to get a little bit more detail to figure out maybe exactly what I'm meant to be teaching. You'll notice that these aren't broken down into first class, second class, third class, fourth class, fifth class, sixth class. They're broken down by letters, the same way the language curriculum is, spanning from A to K. And they are a learning pathway that children might progress through. But there is no expectation that every child would get to stage K or the very end of this pathway at the end. There's flexibility there for children to move up and down, for classes to move up and down along these letters, and that just because a child is at one particular milestone in one area, it mightn't be the same in every one. But when we were coming up with Maths My Way, we leaned heavily on these to try and see, in general, where is the curriculum signposting that children's learning should progress. So for third class, in particular, I'd start by looking at milestone G. Again, I might need to go down lower, depending on the children in front of me, or I might need to go higher, but they aren't prescriptive to different class levels. So now in this toolkit, I'm looking at column G, and I have 4 pages to go down through to try and figure out what subtraction will look like in my class. So I see the first one is adds and subtracts within 999 with and without renaming. Then there's stuff about multiplication and division down further. So if I go down to the next page, I see fluently recalls an addition and subtraction facts beyond 20. And I'll keep going down to see what else is coming up. And I see explores alternative solution strategies to addition and subtraction tasks. So there's a bit of a job here in going down through the different elements. The elements are marked down the left-hand side, and there's a bit of a job in figuring out exactly what the curriculum says I should be teaching in my class. So when we were coming up with Maths My Way, we wanted to take this curriculum burden off teachers, that we went through this in devising the program so that it's there for you and organized in clear and concise fortnightly plans, unit plans, to kind of organize this information in a way that made sense, and as much as possible in ways that lined up with what teachers would be familiar with. So for example, teachers in third class would be familiar with adding and subtracting within 999. But it's good to be familiar with these and to take some time, even like if you picked one unit that you're teaching between Halloween and Christmas, one week's work, and go into the toolkit and have a look at what different things are there, and look beyond, look to milestone K as well, and see, well, what does the curriculum say? What does it expect learners to get towards in their time in primary school? Just get back to the slides there. Okay, so this is an example of one of the slides. It's from third class, Unit 5, Lesson 1, and it's the introduction to subtraction in third class. And this is, I like this because it's a nice way to see kind of the difference between maybe the old curriculum and the new curriculum. So looking at part A1 here, what is the difference between 354 and 329? This activity I used with my class recently, and immediately people in the class were able to tell me that 354 rounds to 350 and that 329 rounds to 330. They could tell me that 354 was even and that the other number was odd. They could tell of both numbers, and they could describe the place value of each number. So there was a huge amount of maths talk going on, kind of think, pair, share activities, where we were getting loads and loads and loads of information about these different numbers. Using rounding, the rounding that we just mentioned, they were able to figure out an approximate difference, that these numbers were approximately 20 apart. Then it came time to find the actual difference between the numbers. And this is where we encountered kind of our first struggle with the children could recall from second class that there was a way they could solve it by writing one number on top of the other and using column subtraction. But we hadn't looked at that again this year, and regrouping just wasn't working for them. They didn't, they couldn't recall how to regroup from the tens to the ones. They knew that there was a step-by-step method, but they just couldn't remember the steps that were involved. Now, using old books or using the old curriculum, I would probably have started off subtraction by showing step by step how to use a column method. But these numbers are only about 20 apart. Like they're relatively close to each other. So there should be other ways that the children are able to find out the difference and to think a little bit more flexibly about it. So like, for example, with by adding on 10, and these again are explored in the slides, but starting at the smaller number, 329, adding on 10 gets us to 339, another 10, 349, and another 5 then will get us to 354. So these numbers are 25 apart. So it's all about that type of thinking, that it's not just let's learn off a step-by-step way of doing this, but that we're trying to build underneath it, that and to think more logically about questions that are presented. Sometimes like the column method and solving calculations in that way is very important and it has a huge value, but that bit of flexible thinking, powerful mathematicians, that's what they need to really have a deep understanding of maths. Teaching in this way, by starting by seeing how can the children figure out how to get from 329 to 354 without jumping in with a method that I want them to learn off, it has definitely let me understand the students in my class better than ever this year. So immediately when we started this, I figured out that there was children who found it really difficult to add and subtract 10 from a number. So it wasn't obvious to them that 329 plus 10 would be 339. I also realized then that there was a lot of still 100 square work going on. So it really showed gaps for me that, that there was a lot of early number work needed with my class before they'd be able to even think about some of these bigger numbers. This particular slide, like we spent an entire lesson using this slide and the couple of slides that came before it, but it was an entire lesson with my class, and I consider that time well spent. We mightn't get to everything on the slides, or we might need extra time, but we're working at the level of the children in front of us, and as the children use the new curriculum more, and as they have extra years using Maths My Way, this type of flexible thinking and number sense will become more and more common in our classes, and it'll become easier for the children. When I was preparing this slide, I had a flashback to when I first started teaching, and coming from leaving cert to did the B.Ed and then started teaching my first year, and I can't even remember what topic it was, but I remember there was children who could figure out the answer without writing out all the steps. That they could use mental methods, they could use number sense to figure out answers to calculations without writing down all the steps. And my harking back to Leaving Cert was like, no, 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 no. You have to write down all the steps. You have to show me all the way you did it. But really, those children were showing absolute huge mathematical proficiency. That they had internalized the number sense and the mental maths to figure these things out in ways that were probably more logical than the way I was asking them to record it. So it's really to encourage that kind of thinking. So that was just an example from my teaching last week that I wanted to go through because I think it shows some of how these slides can be used, how the activities can be used, and also how it's going to take time for the new curriculum to be embedded. That idea, again, that this is the first year of it being embedded, that it's going to be a journey, and that every year we're on the journey, it's going to get easier and easier. So in general, then, some top tips that I would suggest for making the implementation.
Patrick?
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt
Sorry,
you. I was waiting till you went to the next slide because I didn't want to interrupt your flow. You are cutting out every now and then. So I was just going to suggest turn off your camera because it'll put less pressure on the internet and hopefully
good idea.
we just don't want to miss any of your nice tips. No, it hasn't actually happened in the last 2 to 3 minutes, but we'll try that. Anyway, sorry.
Yep. Jump in again, Kira, if it keeps happening, and we'll see if we can do
it. We'll do.
Help. Yeah.
Yeah.
Lovely. Thanks. So the first one I'd say is make sure you allow at least 45 minutes per set of slides, or I would say, rather than putting a specific time on it, make sure that you're allowing at least a full lesson per set of slides. Now, as I mentioned there, like I used 5 slides for a whole lesson, and I only got to the end of part A. So it's not that you'll always get through a set of slides in a lesson, but give yourself the best chance. So what I mean there is that, if some of your maths lesson is going on something else, then you're probably not going to have enough time to get through it. So make sure that you're giving the slides the kind of the full lesson to go with. With practice pages, the practice pages are optional. Like if you cover the 4 main pages of the lesson, you'll have met all of the content, and the practice pages could be skipped, especially this year, and I would say at least for now as well. So there might be a thing that in the week coming up to Christmas, you might decide that will be a nice week to go back and use the practice pages and have a bit of revision with them and retouch on some of the topics that you looked at this year. So they don't have to be completed for you to feel that you have the topic covered. Equally, there are 4 lessons each week, but we're aiming at that very, very broad learning outcome. So if it's a thing that you only get 3 of the lessons covered, or even only 2 of the lessons covered, you might still be happy that you've addressed that learning outcome sufficiently with the children that are in front of you, and that you're happy to move on. You don't have to get everything completed. I'd recommend with activities to use an introduce, pair, share approach. So particularly some of the slide activities and the activities in the book as well, that there's always that expectation that the teacher is introducing them and we're reading them together to see that we know what the activity is about. So it's introduced whole class. We'll read it together. We'll discuss any tricky words that are coming up. We might even ask, how might someone get started? Then there's pair work, where the children have the opportunity to talk about it with a partner. It might only be a quick 30-minute discussion. It might be a little bit of pair work with the whiteboards out, or it might be a longer task that the children are working with their partner for a couple of minutes on. And then there's whole class feedback after the activity to try and consolidate the learning to see where do different children get to. And every child doesn't have to get to the same point, but they can still learn from listening to how each other got on with the activity. Recommend using a combination of whole class work and pair work. There are a huge amount of activities on the slides and in the book. Sometimes you might want to spend a lot of time on something, and that's where the pair work is great. But sometimes if you're under time pressure, but you still want to touch on something without giving it a huge amount of time, doing something whole class works as well, rather than, getting suggestions from the room, hands up, what do you think we should do first, any ideas, and working on it as an entire class rather than working on it individually or in pairs. So there to use it in the way that suits your class. And classroom management is going to come into this as well. Some classes will be very experienced with pair work and with using concrete resources and things like that. With other classes, it might be a lot more challenging, and it might be nothing to do with the maths itself. It might be just the dynamics in the room, the particular children you have, behavioral issues that are coming up. Like there's a huge amount of background stuff there that can all impact this. And you can adjust how you use it to suit those things that are coming up. Concrete resources should be accessible to all students. So do you recommend having the idea of the maths table where the different resources are out, that they're available for the students to use, and that they're kind of available to use almost whenever they want, so that like when children are working on a particular task, or maybe it's a particular set of questions, that some children might feel very confident to work on them just in their copy. Some children might want to have 100 square to help them. Some children might want to get out the Dean's blocks to help them visualize what's happening when they're adding or they're subtracting. So it's about different children. The resources aren't necessarily that every single child is doing the exact same thing with the resource at once, but it's that the resources are accessible to support learning as needed. A few more. So this is the whole idea of differentiation, and coming back to what I mentioned at the start about subtraction, where I only did one activity in the day, but it's this idea of when you see a page in the book, look at it and see, what do you want all of the children to do? So these are two examples where the green indicates I wanted every child in my class to do these activities. The orange activities were ones that I thought that most of the children would get onto. Some of them you'll see on the first page there are kind of the part 2 questions, that as children were finished with part 1, then then children will be encouraged to move on to part 2. And finally, the bits in red are the activities that some of the children will get to. Those children who are finished early and who need that extra push, that there's those activities there for them. And in general, I find that the children who grasp the concepts very quickly, the children who in general find maths easy, that when they have finished the activities that all and most get to, that when it comes to the activities I've marked in red there, that in general they're able to read and interpret those activities themselves and have a go at them. Sometimes they might need a little bit of explanation just to help with any language barriers or any text difficulties. But in general, for the most part, the children are able to work on those activities themselves. And it just means that instead of, like, the children who are finished first, instead of rewarding them with just more of the practice, that's just more of the same. Instead, there's an extra challenge there. There's something that it requires a bit deeper thinking, a bit more something to get them engaged and to keep them feeling productive about maths and having positive feelings about maths. One more example there as well. I'd recommend completing activities on whiteboards instead of copies some of the time, not all of the time, obviously, but definitely some of the more problem-solving activities, or the ones that maybe are in tables or might be a little bit harder to record. So especially, like, I found with third class this year, they're only getting used to using maths copies, and there was kind of two challenges. The first challenge was kind of the maths that was involved and what they were being asked to do. But there was also kind of a little challenge in how do you transfer something from a book to a copy and using copies. Now they're getting, like, you can see progress every week. They're getting better and better at it. But sometimes by doing something on the whiteboard, it takes that pressure away of it having to look perfect. So it's a great tool for some of these activities. And I would say if you're using the whiteboards instead, you might want to use something like this assessment checklist, where like these were, this is just an example, one that I just threw together of different activities that could have been completed on the whiteboards and how different children went on with them. So I used a full triangle for something they found that they were able to complete independently or, with relative ease. The little bit of the triangle, the yellow if they needed a little bit of support, and the orange if they were experiencing significant challenges. So it kind of tells you two things. When you look vertically through the lists, you get a very quick idea of what pages or what tasks were particularly challenging. And when you look horizontally, you get a great indication of how the children are doing overall. So just by using these checklists, it takes away that fear of, well, what if the inspector comes in and there's nothing in the copy or there's not that much in the copy, so there's no evidence of what the children have learned. Tick lists and trackers like this are great ways to record that. And to be honest, I find it way quicker than having to gather up all the copies and maybe bring them home with me and, go through each copy individually. These tick lists are definitely much more time effective. And I know time is, we need to get onto the support clinic element of the webinar tonight, but this is just the final one to look at, and it's just about different strategies. So when we go through the different operations in particular, there are a lot of different strategies that come up. So this one is from third class edition. And this was kind of a slide that just gave a summary of the 5 different strategies that were looked at. But then there are slides that go through each one of these strategies separately. And I really want to emphasize that we are not expecting every child to understand or use every strategy. The point of these slides is to show that there are different ways of doing it, and that some children will use ways that are kind of below these, or like from maybe a level behind or a class level behind. So for example, with addition, some children, yes, will still be using 100 squares. Some children will be using the Dean's blocks, and some children will be using some of these number sense strategies. It's to encourage that understanding that there's one way to do it, and that there's a lot of value to all of the different ways that calculations can be solved, that numbers can be combined and separated as well. That there's a huge variety in how it can be done, to place huge value on that, and to show that it's not just the column method. Yes, the column method is very important and it is efficient, but sometimes it's not the most efficient way. That there's using our number sense is something that should really be valued. And again, as I said earlier, this is something that will take time for the children to get used to. Like I said, if I like teaching last year, if I was starting subtraction, I would probably have started by showing, like if I was following a program, I'd probably have shown how to do subtraction the first day and then expected the children to follow that. But we're moving towards, let's see what they know about subtraction. Let's see, can we use our mental maths? Can we use our number sense to subtract, to figure it out without using the column method? We'll still learn that because it's still very important and it is very efficient, but just that it's not the only crutch we have to rely on. Oh yeah. Just then finally to look at sorry, I said finally last time and I forgot this one was here. It's not that I'm lying, I forgot. Just to look at the yearly plan or the contents of the books very briefly, because I know like there's a lot of content to get through with maths every school year. We have 32 units in total. 2 of those are revision units. So that leaves 30 units across the year. But there are some months where there are kind of gaps, or where there's a bit of wiggle room, I'd say. So in December, for example, we deliberately left 2 weeks of work in September, not 3, because we know there are a lot of plays, performances, things that go on in December. Same in some of the months later down, like February, there's 2, but I think most people probably have 3 weeks of teaching there. And in June, there's only one kind of core unit and then one revision unit. So if you're feeling under pressure, like I'm already a unit behind on what the yearly plan says I would be at. But just remember that there is wiggle room there, that at certain times during the year there'll be gaps where if you weren't able to get to a particular topic at that time, you can readjust it and go back and teach it later in the year. Okay, so after that, then I'll pass back to Ciara and we'll start the second part of the session.
Lovely. Thanks, Patrick. We were okay, I think, with the cutting out there. It definitely turning the camera off helped. Right. I'll get in here. We'll just get the presentation back up. Okay, great. So this is our support clinic section. So I'm going to start with answering some of the questions that already came in. So again, thank you for submitting those. We're going to answer the most common ones here, but if you registered today, we won't have had your questions in time to include them in the presentation. So do feel free to ask those in the chat, or anything else that has not been covered, feel free to ask it in the chat. I'm going to say straight up, just to address this, we did get quite a few questions in about how to use Maths My Way in a multi-grade setting. Now, Patrick does not teach in a multi-grade setting, and nor have I a huge amount of experience in multi-grade. So we are not going to address multi-grade questions specifically on today's webinar. What we are going to do instead is take a bit of a deep dive focus on multi-grade over the next couple of weeks. We're going to look into it in more detail about how we can best support teachers using the program within multi-grade. So if any of you are on the call here and would like to be involved in some of that research that we're going to do, I will drop a message into the chat shortly and you can just give me a thumbs up. So I'll do that in a little bit. I'm just going to run through some of the other questions that have come in first. So first up, resource availability. Loads of people asking about when things are available, what is available, are there printed versions of things, and so on. So just to cover off a couple of those, we do have fluency books which are available all the way from first up to sixth class, and the answer booklets to go with those are available on My Fowlins library. So when you go into your library, click into your fluency book, you'll have your ebook there and your answer booklet. So they are all fully available now. In regards to planning, the editable versions of the yearly, fortnightly, and unit plans are also available on My Fowlins library, but there is a printed teacher's guide if you prefer having something printed in your hand. That includes the yearly and unit plans. And all you need to do to get your hands on that, if you don't have it, is get in touch with either your local rep or give us a shout at customer service and we will get one sent out to you if you're using the program. Assessments, then we do have editable termly assessments, which are available on Fowlins library as well. But we now have added an option to get a printed assessment booklet. So if you just want them all printed, ready to go, they are now available. All you need to do is pay for the postage and packaging on those. You don't need to pay for the actual print of them. So they can also be got now. Again, get in touch with your rep or customer service to get those if you need them. And then finally, teaching slides. I know so many people are asking about the slides and when everything will be available. We absolutely would have loved to have everything ready to go on the 1st of September for everybody, but as I'm sure those of you who are using the slides know, there is just a huge amount of work in them. There's so much that goes into them to make them, interactive, engaging, have all the right resources there, get them reviewed. So all of that has been going on in the background. The production team have been working very hard on that, and we are uploading regularly to try and stay ahead of where teachers are if they're using our yearly plan. At the moment, everything up to Unit 10 is available, which as per the yearly plan goes up to mid-November. And our plan is to have everything, all the content up there by the end of November for you. Now, I do know that there are some people naturally are not going to be following the yearly plan we've suggested, and that is absolutely fine. So what we're doing for our next upload is we're prioritizing units that we know people are looking for. So for example, we know no one's going to be looking for Division 4 when they haven't done Division 1, 2 and 3, but people might be looking for transformations or chants or time, or units that are can be done in kind of different orders. So we'll focus on those for our next upload, as well as staying ahead of where people are with their yearly plans. And thank you for bearing with us while we do that. Then just a couple of notes on technical troubleshooting before we go back into content. So these are just some of the questions that we got that relate kind of to more technical use of our platform. So just guidance on using the website in general, where you can access interactive material. Is it from the ebook or can you do that separately? Yes, it can be done from the ebook. About adding a back button to the slides, about editing fortnightly plans. So what I'm going to share here, and there'll be a link to this sent out as part of this presentation as well afterwards, is to draw your attention to the fact that we have a Getting Started with Maths My Way video. It's available in the plan section for every class. So if when you go into your plan section there, and it's at the very top, it's the first thing you'll see. Have a quick look at that video. It's about 2-3 minutes long, I think, and it will take you through where to find all the resources, tips on how to get the most out of them, opening things from the ebook versus finding the resources from the contents list, how to navigate through the slides, including going backwards, and how to make that as seamless as possible. So all of that is covered in that video. So rather than me talking through all of that now when we've limited time, I'd suggest everyone have a look at that video. But if there's something you need further help with, don't hesitate to come back to us. Now we're on to content queries then. So Patrick, will I just load these up and then I'll let you take over some of the answering? Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I have to rethink my location for the next webinar. The internet isn't great, and apologies for dropping out during. But yeah, if you want to just pop them up there, we
Lovely.
can use your screen and talk through
Yeah,
it. Yeah.
exactly. I'll pop them all up and then you can just answer them in whatever order you like, rather than going one at a time. So these are just some of the main questions that we received from people who'd registered for the webinar. So Patrick, you feel free to choose whichever ones you want to focus on there.
Yeah. So I guess start where someone says they're teaching 5th class and find the content a bit hard and confusing for the children. And this is, I think, back to that idea of, we're at that first step of embedding that, the children are going to find the change a little bit hard this year. As teachers, we're going to find the change a little bit hard, moving to the new curriculum and, teaching topics for the first time that the children don't have experience with. Like if, like when we designed Maths My Way, we designed it like with the new curriculum as if the children had worked through it from junior infants. We couldn't design a program just for the first year of using the new curriculum and then a new book again for afterwards, because then everyone would have to go and buy a new one. It wouldn't be great. So it'll take a little bit of time for children to get used to the different ways of thinking, to get used to the different types of questions. And every year that you're using it, you'll start to see that the children are a little bit more comfortable thinking in different ways and trying out different ideas. Don't be afraid to cut it down, to skip bits, and to adjust it to your class level. As I showed you with the toolkit at the start, it isn't expected, like that toolkit isn't split out between different class levels. So if you found, especially some of the new topics like transformations, if you thought that it was going to be way too hard to teach the 5th class one to your class, on your Folens online, you should have access to the 4th. You might want to go back to 4th class and see, maybe you do some of that content instead. So lots of different ways around it. With the maths talk, so definitely the slides are there to guide the maths talk with different prompts, the different questions that come up, and hopefully more natural maths talk is going to come up as well in your room. Like I mentioned that example with subtraction where there was the 2 numbers, and I just asked the children for everything that they knew about those 2 numbers. And they were telling me about the rounding, the digit sum. They were like all the different things that had come up with Maths My Way since September, different things that we had done maths talk activities on, that they were going back and bringing up by themselves. Like that idea of the digit sum, where you add the 3 digits of a number together to find that. They had remembered that from a problem we were doing earlier in the year, and wanted to include that. So I can already see that the ideas are building on each other and the same things are coming up again and again. With Polypad, it's definitely there. What I love about Polypad is when I'm explaining something to my class, I can click the Polypad button to bring me out into Polypad, and I have the resources there to just demonstrate something. Um, you can also sometimes there's a little full screen button within the manipulative on the slide as well to make it bigger. Just it really is great just having those resources there at hand that you don't have to go drawing things, like, you know, they're just there for you. And I know there are teachers in our school as well who, when they have the iPads, the box of iPads, they generate the QR code. Just when you're in Chrome, to generate the QR code, all you have to do is click the three buttons up in the top right corner and go down to cast, save, and share. And within that menu, there's an option, create QR code. You can do it for any website, like you can, any game that you have up on your whiteboard or anything you want to share from Chrome, you can use this to share it. But it's people use, I've heard of people using that to share the resources so that if they didn't have Dean's blocks, for example, that they can do it on the iPads, and it's a nice way of doing it as well. And sometimes, to be honest, with the actual physical resource, sometimes it can be a little bit hard to arrange them. Whereas when you're using the digital version, sometimes it's nice the way it can arrange. There's also the way you can select all of the items, and sometimes there's an arrange button where you can click it, and it just makes everything look tidier. So the Polypad I love it, for especially for teacher explanations. With the active learning and the hands-on lessons, it's really that, I guess, the lesson isn't, or the activity isn't always going to be that the children have to use the hands-on way of doing it. Very often it's that the hands-on resources are available in the room for the children to use as they need them. But what's important is that, what's the idea that they're thinking about? So rather than thinking my lesson has to be hands-on, we're thinking my lesson is about subtraction, and hands-on resources are available in the room if there are children who would benefit from that. And you know, that there's that bit of agency in it as well, that, you know, we're not insisting that particular children use the hands-on materials, but that they're welcome to come and use them if they feel it would be useful for them. The thing on the yearly scheme, there's a couple of ways you can think about it. So, like, say I'm speaking again about subtraction. You know, personally in third class, I felt subtraction was one of those fundamental topics that, like, you know, I really wanted my children to, or the students in the class, to have a solid understanding of subtraction before we moved on. So we spent the first week doing it, but I felt there was too many children who weren't ready to move on, that I really wanted another week to spend another week doing it. So I chose to prioritize that. The way I'll get around it is coming up to Christmas, and at other time, maybe in June, I'll move other topics there. There might also be topics that when I get to that, I've decided not to spend as long on them, to leave out a couple of the lessons. Just for this year, as you know, because things will take longer this year than they will in subsequent years. On the timing, minutes a day for maths and 80 on Wednesday. I'm finding it tough to teach the full lesson. 100%, you know, 40 minutes is quite a tight time frame to get into, and 80 also seems quite long, so maybe the timetable could be looked at there. But use that approach where, you know, set low expectations, I guess, for yourself. That use that whole idea of, what do I want all children to get to? What do I want some children to do, or most children to do? And then what will some of the children do? If you set a target for yourself, that pick even one thing on the page and I'll be happy if all of the children get this thing done, then, you know, what the worst thing that can happen is you have extra time at the end and you get to do another activity. So I think keeping the keeping the expectations that you're not maybe trying to get everything done, that pick what's your priority for the day, and then anything beyond that then is a bonus. And as well, you might, like, some lessons you might look at and you'd say, no priority. I really want to get the children to look at all of this. And that's where you might decide to split a lesson over 2 days to make sure that you get everything looked at.
That's everything, Patrick, there, is it?
I think most, yeah.
Yeah, I've got one other question in the chat, and if anyone else has questions they want to throw into the chat, please do work away now. Just someone asking, is it recommended the pupils write into the book in 3rd class?
So for 3rd to 6th, the books are designed not to be written in. For the reason, like her reasons for it were in general the book scheme. So I know like the recommendation is that when books are bought on the book scheme, that they're used for a number of years, that they're kind of in a book rental type situation. And schools are struggling with costs and keeping the cost of books down. So by having them not write in, it makes it easier for the books to be used from year to year and to keep costs down for schools. Now I know with my class, like there was like in algebra, say there was a lot of tables that came up that the children needed to complete the table. So when I had the book open on the screen, I just screenshot the table and popped it into a Word document so I could print it off loads of times, and we stuck those into the copy. So that was just one example of, like, rather than wasting the book by filling in a couple of pages in it, I just took that table and print, or like even you could photocopy it a couple of times if there was a particular page that that you wanted the children to write in. But for the most part, I found that we're fine with the whiteboards and the copies. And there's only been the couple of lessons where the little bit of photocopying or the little bit of printing out a table might have been useful.
Yeah. And actually, to add to that as well, as we were working through the program, anytime that we got to an activity, we said, oh, that's going to be tricky when you're not writing in the book, particularly for 3rd class, very conscious of 3rd class. We created a printable version. So you'll find a lot of times in the slides, if you hit your teaching notes button at the top of the slides, there'll be printables there. Oftentimes it's something like that you can stick into the copy for them to save them having to work everything out. So, a lot of that has already been done as well to try and help with that transition to not writing into your book. Good few more questions coming in there now. So I'll just work our way down through this. It's one person saying, Patrick, that some of the questions are quite wordy and it's difficult for younger children to work through them independently. For example, the calendar work in time 1 of 1st class. Any tips for a class who are weak readers and struggle to access these lessons?
Yeah, and that's back to the whole strategy, I guess, of introduce, pair, share, that before the children would start working on a particular activity, that it's introduced at a whole class level to overcome those reading difficulties. That the program isn't designed for children to work through it independently. Like in my opinion, if a book was if children were able to work through a book independently, they don't really need teaching. Like this is a program focused on teaching the new curriculum. So the teacher is front and center in that. And I know saying that, I know it is so hard for our multi-grade colleagues. And in my own class as well, sometimes it can feel like multi-grade. So it is challenging when children can't read on and go with the next activity. What I have found is, as long as I start it introduction, like if we get everyone started going through the words, making sure everyone knows what's going on, that then the children who are finished first are most likely the children who are able to read the next activity themselves and go on with it, or with a small bit of support are able to continue on to the next activity. So hopefully, and again, I know hard and multi-grade, but hopefully by just taking that time at the start of each activity, that it helps with the language barrier or reading barrier.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing that we always say is to bear in mind, is that there's no expectation that children are working on this independently, that it is very much teacher mediated. Unlike maybe a workbook that might go home for homework, that type of thing, where they are designed to be used more independently, that's not the setup for Maths My Way. There's someone asking just where I can find the answer booklet. So if that's in relation to the fluency book answer booklets, when you go into the fluency book on My Folan's library, click the assess tab and you'll find the answer booklets there. There isn't an answer booklet in and of itself for Maths My Way. Instead, within the unit plans, we have all the anticipated student responses, which are basically the answers. So you'll find those in unit plans, either in your printed teacher's guide or in the plan section on library. I know someone is asking about getting a completion cert for this. We should be able to sort that out. Sarah's working on the background there. She should be able to look after that as part of, if you need confirmation that you've attended this, we can get that sorted for you. Also, a former past pupil of Cronin's, Patrick, apparently.
Great to see.
Someone else asking, will there be a teacher manual that offers ideas or activities for active learning with each topic? So there is there are teacher guides, teacher manuals to go with Maths My Way. All the editable versions, as I said, are on library. But then you do have a printed teacher's guide as well. And within that, it kind of gives you further guidance, teaching notes on what's happening in the lessons. But one of our big drivers with Maths My Way was to set it up in such a way that teachers didn't always have to go dive into a teacher's guide, because some of the main feedback we got at the beginning of our research into this program was that these great ideas that are sometimes buried in teachers' guides get lost because teachers do not have the time to be reading through all of these. So the way that we've set it up is that a lot of the ideas and the activities are presented on the slides. So you just have to open up the slides and the activities and ideas are right there for you. But you will find further teaching notes to go along with them and things to expect from the children and what to draw out from the children within the teacher's guide. Someone asking about the problem solving book as well. Patrick, if you want to give that a little plug while we're here.
I'd love to, but I don't think we have enough time. I'd be here for another hour.
That's very fair. I will drop a link about the problem solving book in here into the chat, or actually Emma's doing great work in the background there, dropping in links. So Emma, if you could drop in the link to the problem solving book, that'd be great.
No problem. Yeah.
Thank you.
Just say on it, it's the problem solving book is just a great chance to look at problems in more detail. There's 30 problems, I think, in each book. Across each one is across 2 pages. And they're like, I've been using them with classes for the last number of years, and I always get a great kick out of using it. And you know, they're just lovely problems. That bit of more developing reasoning, the adaptive problem solving, they're fully in line with the new curriculum. The content slightly adjusted for the new curriculum, but the whole problem solving and the applying and communicating and it's all very new curriculum. You know, it's definitely still worth using if you have them in your school.
Yeah, they provide a lovely deep dive into problem solving skills. Actually, they're probably the program that Patrick and I were most excited to work on. So it's a lovely, lovely kind of dive into problem solving, and can be used flexibly. So, you know, some schools like to use them on a Friday and get, you know, have that as, right, we're going to dive into this problem. Some yet like to use it at the beginning of a unit as a way to assess where children are with their content understanding of the unit. So there's lots of different ways you can bring them into your class. Okay, that seems to be it for sorry, one more. Where are the printables for each topic? Again, you'll see that in the Getting Started with Maths My Way video is really great for all this kind of where things can be found. But there's 2 places to find your printables. One is if you click the Plan tab in Folan's library, the printables will be there and you can filter them by the topic. Or if you're in your teaching slides and you have your teaching slides open, there is a teaching notes button at the top, and there you will find the unit plan and the printables. So there's 2 different ways depending on, you know, whether you're already in the slides or you're just doing some planning on Folan's library. I will just finish off here with just what's coming up next. to let you know. So we do have another webinar happening in November, on the 11th, Tuesday, 11th of November, same time. We will be focusing this time on modelling, so mathematical modelling using Maths My Way, and there'll be loads and loads and loads about Polypad on this one. So I know that was one of the questions that came up about using Polypad. So if you're interested in a deeper dive into Polypad, that will be a really great webinar to join. And we'll be doing kind of more, I suppose, diving more into the content of Maths My Way. Today was a bit of a kind of an overview about how to use the program and kind of things you can do within the classroom and your classroom setup. This will be a little bit more into diving into actual content. Just to remember, your local sales rep is always there. If you have further queries or you require any additional support, give them a shout. And they also have a kind of a direct line to me, and then via me a direct line to Patrick. So we're always able to get answers for questions for you. And if you have been on this webinar and you're not using Maths My Way, fair play for sticking with us. I hope it's given you a little bit of an insight into it. But if you want to give it a go, there are resources that you can try on Folens.ie, or you can sign up for a full trial on My Folens Library. And Patrick mentioned it at the beginning, but we have some lovely math size posters freely available on Folens.ie to any teacher. You don't have to be using the program. And they're a really great way to do something interesting for Maths Week. Very simple to use. Just pop them up, go through the questions. And I know some teachers have been having great fun with those with their class over the past couple of weeks, and we have specific Halloween ones coming up now as well. So it's a nice time to bring together that Halloween and Maths Week content all in one. So I think that's it from us. I'll just have a quick look back at the chat here to make sure we're not missing anything. Yeah, I think we've covered most things. If we haven't, we'll get back to you anyway. We always go through the chat afterwards just to make sure that we've caught everything. And if you need certificates to confirm you've been here, or links to anything, or you've more questions about multi-grade and you want to get involved, just give us a shout. So thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks a million. Happy Maths Week and enjoy midterm.